70% of the world's internet traffic passes through a single county in Northern Virginia. Not Silicon Valley, not New York, Loudoun County, a stretch of suburbia 30 miles west of Washington, D.C. If you drive through Ashburn, you might not notice anything unusual. Office parks, chain restaurants, subdivisions. But underneath those unremarkable suburban roads, there are miles of fiber optic cable, thick bundles of glass strands buried in conduit, carrying more data than almost anywhere else on the planet. The hum of industrial cooling fans is audible from the street. Stand near one of these facilities on a quiet evening, and you'll pick up a low, constant drone. Thousands of server fans spinning in unison, pushing hot air out of windowless concrete buildings the size of shopping malls, surrounded by chain-link fences, and backup diesel generators big enough to power a hospital. This is the cloud. Not a weightless mist floating above the telephone poles. A physical empire of concrete, copper, and cooling pipes buried in a Virginia suburb. And the reason you picture something soft and white when you hear that word instead of a warehouse full of computers that never turn off, that's a marketing story. One that started in 1996. The term cloud computing didn't come from a tech visionary. It came from a marketing problem. Compaq Computer was drafting an internal business plan for selling servers to internet service providers. They needed a phrase that made the technical reality of server farms sound clean, approachable, and inevitable. Someone in that room wrote cloud computing into the document. And the metaphor was born. A year later, a professor named Ramnath Chellappa gave the term its first academic definition. At a conference in Dallas. He wasn't trying to launch a trillion-dollar industry. He was describing a shift in how computation might be delivered. Moving from something you owned to something you accessed. But the word itself, cloud, did most of the heavy lifting. It was genius, really. Clouds are everywhere and nowhere. They're weightless, clean, natural. You don't have to understand meteorology to look up and know what a cloud is. The metaphor hid the servers, the cables, the cooling systems, the diesel generators, the concrete, and replaced all of it with a picture of something soft and white, floating harmlessly above the horizon. This was the pivot point. Before the cloud, we owned things. Hard drives sat on desks. Servers lived in closets. IT departments touched actual machines. Companies budgeted for hardware refreshes every 3 to 5 years and employed people whose entire job was keeping those machines running. After the cloud, we rented access to someone else's machines and stopped thinking about where they were. The industry spent the next 2 decades selling this shift not as a technical architecture decision, but as liberation. No more maintenance, no more blinking lights in the basement, just your files, everywhere you went, like magic. And it worked because it was genuinely useful. The convenience was real, but the metaphor was doing something else too. It was making the physical infrastructure invisible on purpose. And when you make something invisible, people stop asking questions about it. That invisibility is what built the physical empire sitting in Ashburn, and it's spreading everywhere. Here's what that simplicity actually bought you. Not a weightless mist floating above the telephone poles. A building, a real one, with a concrete foundation and a loading dock. And a security gate that checks badges. The cloud is a network of data centers, and the data center is just a warehouse filled with computers that never turn off. When you upload a photo to Google Photos, your file doesn't dissolve into the atmosphere. It lands on a physical hard drive spinning inside a metal rack. Inside a row of identical racks, inside a building the size of 6 football fields, the air inside smells like hot metal, and the floor hums with vibration you can feel through your shoes. There are miles of cooling pipes overhead and backup diesel generators outside. That's your photo library. That's your email inbox from 2014. AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud don't advertise these buildings, but they build them constantly. And the scale is hard to wrap your head around. A single data center campus can draw as much power as 80,000 homes. Some regions house dozens of these facilities clustered together, pulling enough electricity to rival a small city. Local utilities have had to fast-track new transmission lines. Residential neighborhoods now sit directly across the street from windowless concrete buildings the size of shopping malls. This isn't one town's problem. It is happening wherever the cloud touches ground. Google's data center in Hamina, Finland, sits on the coast and pumps seawater through its cooling systems because the machines generate so much heat that air conditioning alone can't keep up. Microsoft carved Azure facilities into former farmland in Iowa, where land was cheap and the power grid had room to spare. These aren't temporary setups. They're permanent industrial installations, and they're spreading. The numbers are hard to pin down exactly, but the best estimates put data centers at about 1 to 2% of global electricity consumption, roughly the same share as the entire aviation industry. A single large facility can pull millions of gallons of water per day for cooling, often in regions already stressed for water. AI training runs are pushing demand through the roof. Every query you type into a chatbot, every AI-generated image you create, it all terminates in one of these buildings and pulls more power than a simple search ever did. The industry is training models constantly now, not occasionally. And each training cycle can consume as much energy as 100 homes use in a year. What this means for you is straightforward. Every gigabyte you store has a physical cost somewhere. The cloud didn't make data weightless. It just moved the weight to someone else's neighborhood and hid it behind a login screen. The trade-off is real, and it's getting bigger every quarter. You don't see the power meters spinning or the water evaporating off the cooling towers, but they're spinning and evaporating all the same. And because none of it is visible, something strange happened to how we behave around storage. When storage feels invisible and unlimited, you stop treating it like space at all. You treat it like air. And that's where the costs start compounding in ways nobody warned us about. The technical term for what happened is the rebound effect. Make something more efficient or seemingly abundant, and people consume more of it, not less. Build wider highways, and you get more traffic. Offer infinite photo backup, and people stop deleting anything. Blurry shots, duplicate files, screenshots from conversations in 2018, all of it stays. All of it sits on those humming racks in Virginia or Finland or Iowa, drawing power indefinitely. Services know this about us. They structure their pricing around it. A family that once managed perfectly fine with a 500 gigabyte external hard drive now pays $10 a month for 2 terabytes of iCloud storage. another 6 for Google One, and Amazon Photos is auto-saving every screenshot they take without asking. None of it curated, none of it ever looked at again. The monthly total creeps past $200 a year for storing data that has no value to anyone, including the people who created it. And switching away gets harder every year. Because your life is threaded through these ecosystems now. Photos here, documents there, shared albums somewhere else. The cost of leaving is higher than the cost of staying, and the providers know it. The cloud didn't shrink our data footprint, it detonated it. We produce and keep more digital stuff than at any point in history, not because we need it, but because the friction of keeping it dropped to zero. And that convenience, that genuine life-improving convenience we talked about, is what powers the whole cycle. So here's the loop. The real convenience of anywhere access got us to trust the cloud with everything. That trust created demand, which required a massive physical build-out of data centers. Those data centers made storage feel so cheap and frictionless that we stopped curating anything and started hoarding everything. That hoarding creates more demand, which justifies building more data centers. It's a feedback loop, not a one-time trade-off. The cloud didn't eliminate physical storage. It moved it out of your closet and into someone else's, then changed who pays the upfront electricity bill, while you pay in subscriptions and data bloat and the quiet environmental cost of keeping millions of forgotten files alive on servers that never sleep. While you pay in subscriptions and data bloat, and the quiet environmental cost of keeping millions of forgotten files alive on servers that never sleep. The promise wasn't a lie. You really did get freedom from hardware. But freedom from hardware turned out to be something different than freedom from the physical world. It just meant the physical world was now someone else's problem, until it became everyone's problem again. And there you have it. Tech at list nicely.